Well, good evening, everyone. I'm joined tonight by Tori, one of our senior therapists at South Pacific Private. I'm Diane Young. Many of you would have met me around the traps of South Pacific and seen me online and other. Tonight we're talking about staying safe and sober this Christmas. And we were talking earlier about how we might begin this, and Tori and I both had a history of being in recovery for quite a long time. And the festive season is fast approaching, and we're aware that this can be a challenging time for you and your recovery. So to begin tonight, I wanted to talk about, to you particularly in recovery, the people that are struggling with those that have family and that are going to have to connect with family, and perhaps for those of us that have not yet connected or we don't have family. So I wanted to talk to Tori this night. My first question really was, what do you think might be one of the most significant things we can do if we've got to deal with family over this period? What is one of the main things we can do to stay safe and sober this Christmas?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that I think really comes up in treatment here is what do we do when we're surrounded by alcohol and surrounded by family members at events? And what I always say is have a safety plan. So a plan that you've set before, that you know what you're going into. So we're looking at boundaries. How long am I going to be spending with my family? What boundaries do I need to set with them, like emotional boundaries as well? Allowing them to know that I'm not drinking. And what we were talking about earlier was making sure that family members are not offering you, one, alcoholic beverages, but two, non-alcoholic beverages as well, and seeing that as a real trigger. I know that a lot of aftercare plans that I've seen at SPP have added that they'll be drinking non-alcoholic beverages, and Di has a great comment for that one.
And my line is, non-alcoholic beverages are for non-alcoholics, not for alcoholics in recovery.
Yes.
In fact, I was at a function recently and a recovering alcoholic was drinking non-alcoholic beer, and I wasn't stalking him or anything. I was just watching him, and he downed about 10 beers very quickly, and I thought, you're drinking like you're drinking alcohol. But he wasn't. He was drinking non-alcoholic. It does something to us, so I think it's probably not helpful.
Yes.
You talked about boundaries. So do you think it's okay to set time limits when you go to visit your family over this period?
100%. I think time limits are vital. So planning how long you're going to be there for, and then planning what you're going to do after. So it would be, if you're going to 12-step meetings, there's so many 12-step meetings that are on still over Christmas. Lots of them do amazing things and put on big spreads. If it's not 12-step that's your thing, then just make sure you're celebrating with people that are supportive of you, that have your best interests at heart, and that you're getting some connection or support from others where you're not getting triggered.
Yeah, I mean, Christmas in and of itself can often be a lonely time for people, even if we've got a lot of people around us. This is a new way of life for us, particularly in early recovery, but not only for people in early recovery, people who've been around a little while. It can actually be a time where we can feel very isolated in the midst of a crowd. I think it's critical what you say about connecting with other people in recovery. And we talked earlier also, when we were discussing what we were going to talk about tonight, about volunteering, perhaps even for people that are less fortunate than you. And you might even take a mate along to volunteer with, so that you've got company. So there's a sense of trying to give service to the community. I think that's always very helpful.
Yeah.
So the meetings you referred to, I have heard it announced around the rooms that there's some meetings that are going to be going all day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you can call in any time and they'll run a series of meetings. As you say, they'll have food and things. And then there's others that are just on at their usual time, and you can connect there. I think it's critical at this point of the year that you don't stay alone and, go into some sort of spiral of even self-pity and feeling terribly alone in the midst of all the frivolity and things. I often say to people, Tori, everybody thinks everybody's having the Brady Bunch Christmas, and they're not.
No.
So I just want to make that statement, because I think that's really important for people to understand also. So let's talk about family dynamics and what we can do when we have to go to the family. When we're talking about boundaries, is it wise to actually say to the host, if it's your mum, dad or some other sibling, that we are only going to stay for a particular period of time, to allow ourselves to set up that plan before the day begins?
I think we need to be really clear, especially when you're early in recovery. The clearer that you can be, the better. A lot of people, especially that come out of treatment or that are in early days, want to make amends, and they think that they need to be doing everything that they can for the family and feel like they're being selfish if they take themselves away. And a lot of the time I hear that, recovery is you need to be selfish. And I'd like to change that word to self-care. I really think it's about being, like, having really good self-care, because having boundaries, setting those time limits, it might feel selfish for your family members, but it's not actually selfish. It's self-care, because if you drink, then you can't be there for anyone.
It's also a good idea at the family function to give yourself a job, isn't it, really?
Yes, get yourself on the Barbie.
Well, or washing up.
Or washing up.
Yeah.
Or making the pavlova, something that so that you're kind of out, that you're feeling busy, because it can feel awkward, especially when you're used to having a glass of wine in your hand.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that it is a challenge. It is a challenge for people, and it was definitely a challenge for me in early days, and still can be at some points.
I think it's important when you say, it reminds me when you say, having a glass in your hand, I always say to people, have the mineral water bottle or whatever it is you're drinking nearby. Keep your glass full. Have that glass in your hand. Do not let that glass get empty, because we're so used to drinking and having something to occupy us. And there's nothing worse for someone in early recovery to feel like they haven't got anywhere to put their hands,
No, and I guess that's also the food issue for other people in recovery that may have eating disorders, binge eating, food addiction, or may develop it because they're in recovery. It can also be a time that's really triggering for people, is that they'll want to just continue to eat and also really struggle to hold boundaries with family. Or if you're alone, feel like that's all you can do as well.
Yeah, that's really important. So having a food plan might be handy for people who have a disordered eating or an eating disorder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a critical time of year for them too, I imagine, with the amount of food, because everything about celebration at Christmas is around food, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So having a food plans are really important. Now, we often talk in recovery about the halts. Talk to me about the halts, Tori.
So the halts are hungry, angry, lonely, tired. We were just talking about stressed or serious.
Serious is my vote.
Serious, and then I added stress. Both are equally important. And I always say this to people in recovery. It is so important that, you've got, on one hand, you're eating too much, but on the other hand, if you don't eat, and if you're not looking after being even thirsty, you don't have that mineral water or that water in your hand, and you're feeling thirsty, your brain's going to be activated going, I need something. And if you see some alcohol, it's more likely that you're going to want to pick that up than actually feed yourself. So we've really got to look after our basic needs in these challenging times and in these stressful times.
Do you remember? I remember as somebody who had a disordered eating, and Christmas was a terrible time for her. And so, because the family was so focused on the big food and the big feast and everything, she'd planned what she was going to have. The boundary was the plate. She'd fill the plate and that was it. But what she did was she went and bought some cricket balls and bats, and she got all the kids in the family to go out the back and play backyard cricket. And she said the fascinating thing was that a few of the adults were looking at it, they're going, what are they doing out there? Well, hang on, I need to go out and play too. So that, everybody moved away from the table and went out the back and played backyard cricket. She said it was the best Christmas they'd had. So I think sometimes it's thinking about what we can do that's different, but that still allows us to celebrate together with the people that we love and the people that are our family.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the same thing, just quietly. So I just thought I'd throw that one in because it just popped into my mind. The other thing I'm thinking about also is, in early recovery, we're very quick to want to make amends. We realise we've, made a mess of our lives, we've upset our family members. Here's an opportunity, everybody's going to be there, we're going to buy them presents and presents and presents. And I'm just wondering about that sort of extreme behaviour of overspending, whether you'd want to say something about that.
Yes, I'm trying to not do that this Christmas. I don't think that's an early recovery thing. That's just a struggle for, I think, most people. But it's really important also when you're thinking about finances. Like a lot of people, when they're trying to make that amends process and make up for their behaviour, they'll overspend when they completely can't afford it and then leave themselves feeling so stressed out as a result.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be able to budget and have boundaries for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of this is coming back to boundaries, isn't it?
Yeah.
So much of it is to set limits, you know. We often come in to recovery and we don't know what a boundary is. We're needless and wantless. We don't know what a need is or how to look after ourselves. So having that plan with boundaries is really significant, I think, to set us up for the day. So let's talk now, that's talking about a lot of the families that when we're actually connecting with families. Now let's talk a little bit about those of you who are struggling because you won't be connecting with your family, and that may be by choice, and it may be as a result of, you know, your addiction. Things haven't corrected themselves yet. There's no meaningful meeting between the family. So let's talk a little bit about how we get through Christmas, staying safe and sober, when we're actually in quite a bit of grief around where we find ourselves. And there's no doubt, Tori, wouldn't you agree, that's heightened this time of year?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's so hard for families trying to hold boundaries with addicts, alcoholics, and addicts, alcoholics hold boundaries with their families. And, you know, these are the times where it's really highlighted the isolation and the loneliness. Thinking about, I've had to hold really hard boundaries with family members as well in the past. I was reflecting on, I think it was 11 years ago, the last time I saw my father, and I had to actually chuck him out of my house because he was using. And it was the hardest thing that I think I've ever had to do, but that's what I needed to do for my family. And I have a lot of pain around that, but we've got to keep ourselves safe. And for the people, you know, who are on the opposite side of that and that are struggling or in early recovery, you know, what I always support people to do is connect. Do not sit in the pain and shame alone. Often that's what you want to do, is you want to hide. But there's so many people that are facing the exact same thing. There's so many addicts and alcoholics in recovery that are new to recovery or have been battling it for a long time, that really that are still trying to make it up to their loved ones. So you're not alone.
Yeah, and I think this is where, you know, thank you for sharing that, Tori, because it's difficult. I mean, I had fractured Christmases for a very long time, and I can remember, you know, and I'll just say remember, you know, when I was challenged in my early recovery a long time ago now, saying, you know, I don't know, the Christmas, I don't know what to do with the Christmas thing, it's all too much. And he said, what about trying to create the Christmas you crave? Perhaps it's a new way to do Christmas, not the way that you think it needs to be done or you think it should have been done, but you have an opportunity to do it. And that leads me to thinking about connecting with others in recovery who may be in a similar position, who may be on their own, who don't want to make a big fuss about Christmas, but, you know, want to go to the beach and have a swim and have some fun. That's why I like this don't be too serious thing.
Yes.
Just coming back to the Holtz, by the way. That's why
Yes.
I voted for the not too serious. So I think sometimes, you know, it's like, look, I'm hanging about on my own. Do you want to do some stuff together? You know, it doesn't mean to say you're, you know, going to be with them all the time, but I think these are really important things to create events even for other recovery people who may be in the same position. Now, there are many people in recovery who have families and whose family would like them to be with them, but they're not ready. They're not ready to go back into that family system for whatever the reason, and they want to actually protect themselves by staying a bit separate. That's okay, you can do that. I stayed separate from my family for quite a while until I felt strong enough. But I would also try and, you know, connect with other people. I use meetings, I think, as I recall. You know, there are meetings, people would go, go and have coffee, let's go and have a swim, you know. So the value of 12-step recovery is that we actually journey with others who are in similar positions to us. And you know, one of the things I find fascinating, there's so little judgment between us. You know, if I'm not there yet, you're okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not there yet, I'm okay with that. But we understand that that's the price that we're paying for our new way of life, that we have to journey gently through it. So, yeah, celebrating with recovery friends, volunteering to people that are in need, and making new connections in those areas. So what about if we're separated from our children? Because this is a painful time. What about if we're not allowed to see them for whatever reason? What can we do to kind of soothe that part of us that's going to be in a lot of grief? I mean, that's pretty hard. You're a mum, so I'm a mum. I know what that would feel like for me.
Yeah.
I haven't had the experience, I have to be honest, my child in recovery. But I imagine that's a painful period too.
Oh, it's an extremely painful period. I've known many men and women, clients and friends who have had to deal with that grief and that pain. And the support that I would give you is that it can change and that there is hope. And I've seen that. And that if you can just stay safe and sober over Christmas and a day at a time, then I imagine it will change. I mean, there's some brave people in treatment right now, you know, who choose, and the people that come in over the Christmas period. And a lot of people, you know, struggle with that and say, I'm away from my family, my children need me. But at the end of the day, like, this is an opportunity for you to be sober. Maybe you're not seeing them now, but you will hopefully get to spend many more Christmases and anniversaries to come.
Do you know, I was at a meeting the other day, and I shared this with a couple of clients today, and this woman is sober 8 years now, and she was, you know, totally estranged from her 2 adult children, and they wanted nothing to do with her. And slowly over the years, what's happened is there's been, you know, contact by phone and email. They're both living in another country now. So she's literally distanced from them geographically. She's continued to stay sober. She's continued to just stay in touch, you know. Anyway, very recently, they both, a daughter and son, they both got together and they said, "Mum, we want you to come and visit us." This was big. Now, she's been before, but she'd stay away and she'd only stay for a few hours with them. But this is like, come and stay with us. Right? So she flew over, she stayed with them, and they sat down with her and said, you know, we finally decided that we think you're actually going to stay sober now. And what we'd like you to think about is coming and living in this country so that you're near us. Now, it's taken 8 years, but they were totally poles apart when she got sober. It's a magnificent story, you know, for all of them, you know, and I don't think it happens there's not very many places it happens except in recovery, you know, that we get a second chance to be with our families and to connect with our kids, you know, whether they're young or whether they're older. And I think it was a beautiful story. I got very emotional as she was telling me the story at the meeting. I thought, wow. It's like, because we say this, you know, you walk in a South Pacific and there's a sign and it says, expect a miracle. And everyone goes, yeah, right. And then when you walk out, on the reverse side of the sign, it says, you are a miracle. And, you know, that's the truth of what the sort of work we're doing here, you know, with the clients. They come, they stay. Now, you also, I just wanted to pick up the point you made earlier about your aftercare plan. So for people that have been in South Pacific, you've left with an aftercare plan. Now, for those of you that left a little while ago, or even more recently, I wouldn't mind you getting that aftercare plan out and having a little look-see and see how much of it you've done and how much you're still attending to, because I'm going to suggest, what do you think, that they started and, yes, I'm going to do everything, and then as you've gotten a bit better, you've sort of dropped things. How important do you think the aftercare plan is as people stay in recovery?
Extremely. I mean, and I say that with extremely because, you know, the people, we see people come back and obviously welcome them. But generally the question is, have you followed your aftercare plan? And they say, no, I didn't even do it, or I stopped going to meetings, basically a lot of the time is that they didn't do it. The aftercare plan is important. This is 3 weeks is just a blip. The rest is when you leave treatment, and it's a day at a time for, you know, it's a day at a time. can't say for the rest of your life to scare people. But I just said it. It's a day at a time. So exactly what Di said, pick up the recovery plan, add more things to it, continue to build on your foundation. I think a lot of the time people build a foundation that they think that they like the strength of what they need based on the life that they expect that they're worth or that they can get. And then as time goes on, your life starts to get bigger and bolder, and you got to go back and start putting some other foundations in there, because life in recovery is amazing and far beyond, lots of people's wildest dreams. What can happen and the miracles that can happen in recovery.
It reminds me of a story, Tori.
Yes.
So a woman had to go to the doctor, and it was an important appointment. She had to take her young son with her, and the doctor thought, oh, this is not going to go well. I've got to talk to this woman about serious things, and she's got a child. And so he got ripped a page out of National Geographic, and it was a picture of the world. And he ripped up the paper into all different pieces, little pieces, and he gave the little pieces to the boy, and he said, put the jigsaw of the world back together. And he thought, oh, that'll keep him quiet for at least 20 minutes while he sorts that out, and I've got time to talk to mother. And he came back and he, had the sticky tape and he'd stuck it all together and everything. And within 10 minutes he came over and he handed it to the doctor. And the doctor looked at him and said, how did you do that? How did you do that? And the boy said, he turned it over and he said, there was a picture of the man on the other side. So I put the man together and the world looked all right.
Oh.
And I think that's what we're doing. We're putting the man back, or some woman, I should say, or the person
yes.
back together, and the world looks all right, irrespective of what's thrown at us. And I suppose that's what we're saying tonight. Christmas is a difficult time for all of us. Some more joyful than others, but there's complexity with all of us. If you're in early recovery or you're struggling with new things that are happening in life, marriage breakup, not access to children, family dysfunction, family separation, put in a safety plan now. It's the 15th of December. You have time to think this through. Get some advice from your sponsor, your therapist, whoever, to put the plan together that's going to keep you safe. Because you're the most important person, not the family, you. We put ourselves first, and the point you make about self-care, people say it's selfish program. No. Self first. Always, always, always self first. And even when we're working with the model of developmental immaturity, the Pia Melody model, it's all about esteem from within. Put yourself first. Set your own boundary. It's always about you.
If I can just add also, we've been talking about, it triggered me when you were speaking about the children and people that don't have children, but then you've got people that do have children and maybe parenting alone. And the extra challenge that faces over the Christmas period, because as a single parent and as a mum, I know that there's a big block of time where there's no childcare available, right? Super triggering.
Yeah.
So I really I support people when I've had to learn this in recovery myself, is to reach out and ask for help, which is really hard because often we're needless and wantless. Really struggle to reach out and get our needs met as adults and being our functional adult. And I support people to do that, to create spaces for fun, create spaces that you're not alone, and to try and have as much fun as possible, but really reach out for help.
You said don't be serious. See?
And don't be so serious.
So it always comes back to
don't parent from your critical parent. Either reparent or parent.
Yes, right, but not your critical parent.
No,
absolutely.
your loving parent.
Yeah, that's right. Look, we've got some questions coming in, and I'd just like to, if you don't mind, Tori, go to those, right?
Yes.
What are some gentle ways we can say no if someone is repeatedly offering me a drink or insisting that one will be okay?
Would you like to answer that?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? A gentle way that we can say no. A lot of clients say to me, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I will often say to them, look, I'm not drinking today, I'm driving. I'll often, make a suggestion that they, I'm on medication, I'm not allowed to drink. I mean, if it's hard to say no, I think it's okay to bend the truth a bit here. You know, you're trying to protect yourself. Most of the time, the people that are insisting that I have a drink when they are drinking is because they have a problem. And they don't want to drink alone, basically. And so what I tend to do is move away from them. I mean, I have been known to say at functions, you know, when people are walking around with drink trays, you know, say to one of the wait staff, could you just make sure you bring me a soft drink every time you come past, or mineral water every time you come past? And most of the time they'll do that. So I do anything I can to make sure that I'm protected in that environment. So I don't know, what do you think? Well, how would you manage that one?
Isn't it funny how my first thought is no. It's like it's not okay to say no, and I love hearing a no. I always try and get the clients to say no. There's so much power in being able to do that, but it's so hard. I was thinking, to say no, but then if they keep going, to actually ask, or make it a little bit humorous. It's really interesting that you want me to have a drink so badly. What's that about? You know, just kind of like, why is that? Rather than just, put it back on them and see. I imagine they'll stop with that.
I have been known to say to some people who've been rather insistent, look, I've probably drunk more than I need to do for any lifetime, so I'm not drinking anymore. You know, that usually makes them stop and look, you know. I have had people, while I've been in recovery, mind you, say to me, you're such an alcoholic type person, you know, because I mean, I can chat and I'm quite comfortable with myself these days. Can't believe you don't drink. And I go, yeah, well, I used to drink quite a lot. I don't anymore. And, you know, most people will get they'll get the hint. So, and if they don't, then I move away from them.
Oh, I don't need alcohol to be the life of the party. I don't need alcohol to have fun.
That's right. I don't need alcohol to be fabulous. I'm just fabulous without it. You got to play with it after a while. And
lots of alcoholics and addicts are some of the loudest and most fun people are sober.
That's right. Should have seen us at the Christmas party.
Oh yeah.
Now, another question's come through. There are so many parties, barbecues, etc., and I think it might be easier if I just don't go. What are your thoughts on this?
Sometimes, yes, I agree. In early recovery, you need to figure out what is good for me. Am I in an okay place? And if you're not, and if you're worried, then I think it is okay not to go.
Well, I'd also say be choosy. You know, you don't have to say yes to everything. I mean, I often say to clients, no is a sentence, right? No is a sentence. You don't have to qualify it with anything. No. In the same way that you can say no to that and this. And the other thing I often say to people, and I do this myself, is people who invite me to things, my initial reaction is go, yeah, that'd be great. You know, I think, no, don't say that, don't say that. So I'll often say, that's great, very generous of you to invite me. Let me check my diary and get back to you. And it gives me time to think about, can I manage that with the other things I've got on? Do I need to say no in this instance? You know, what's best for me, not what's best for them. So look, you know, there's been a very, you know, it's a very interesting time. And I think, you know, the other thing, coming out of COVID in the way that we are, there seems to me this year to have been a lot more socialising. We can get together with each other. And, you know, all that. Yes, okay. So
just one more thing to that question. Yeah. Take a recovery buddy with you.
Ah, good idea.
So important.
Yeah.
People always do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Drag someone along with you. Someone that from recovery, or someone that's just willing, that's not in recovery, but you know is not going to drink with you. You know, it might just be a family member, and you say, look, I really don't want to come to this barbecue. I'm feeling a bit shaky. Would you mind not drinking with me? Just having support.
Yeah, and the plan before you go in. Yes. Okay, so the code word is, you know, I think Uncle Bill's ready. We'll be ready to pick up now. Means we're getting out of here right immediately. We're not discussing it, right? I always have the code. Always have the code. It's always good to have code. Next one. My Christmases as a child were not good. Ditto. It always brings back memories that are triggering. How can I stop this? You want to speak to that?
I'll let you.
My Christmases as a child were not good, and it took me quite a while in recovery to actually have a Christmas where I felt like I could relax a bit. I found often I was lonely in a crowd. I didn't know how to act. It had never been modelled healthily to me. So now I guess it just took some time for me, and I just stayed with my recovery people and the people that would support me, and I always had a plan. And if all else failed, I went home and watched telly, do you know, and that was okay. It's like whatever I got to do to get through the day without drinking or drugging, because I don't want to wake up on the 26th of December, or probably for me it would have been like the 28th, and wonder what I've done with 3 days, you know, where have I been? I want to wake up 26th of December and think, this is great, I'm sober, and let's go and do something fun and have a swim. Do you want to make a comment about that? No?
No, I'm
Okay,
good.
you're good? Okay, thank you for this next question, because it was a point I was going to make. What about New Year's Eve? Seems it's always about alcohol. Any tips? I agree with you. And one of the things we were going to say on our final point was, we often focus on Christmas, you know, we're resolute, we've got family, there's triggering stuff going on, and we breathe out when it's all over and we take our eye off the ball, and then we're hit with New Year's Eve, right? New Year's Eve is in fact always about alcohol. More so in fact in many ways than Christmas. Yeah. So it's always about staying the course through this whole period from Christmas to New Year. So the tips about that are probably the same, but stricter. Because it'll be a bit, if you go out in the midst of it all, it'll all be a bit mad.
Be careful where you go. But there's lots of places even outdoors that have non-alcoholic spaces. I remember we used to go, I think it's at Manly, where half of the wharf is for all the boozos, and then the other half is for families. So everybody in recovery would go over that side, and it felt a lot safer. We'd start, doing new rituals that you do, like go kayaking, make it so that you're doing something different.
I always like to plan something nice on New Year's Day morning, early.
Yes.
So that when everyone's staggering home with a big hangover, I'm fresh. Got my tail in the air and ready to greet the new year. So yeah, just be very careful. There are some places, alcohol-free places in the area I live also, which is unusual because it's a big drinking area. But often there'll be families around and it's just very enjoyable. And of course this year I think we probably can enjoy the fireworks much more than we have in previous years.
And set intentions, not resolutions. I think is an important one. So, and really make it a spiritual practice that you're saying goodbye on New Year's Eve to that year, or waking up in the morning and doing some kind of spiritual practice, or whatever your higher power is, or and really putting in energy into the new year, into what you intend to create for yourself for the year to come.
Yeah, it's that thing of what do I want to let go of that hasn't served me well this year, and what do I want to embrace more in the new year, with intent, rather than resolution. Yeah, you're right. What's the difference between alcoholism and depression? Am I depressed, or is my alcoholism playing up? Well, that's an interesting question, because the first question I want to ask you is, I'm presuming you're saying that from the space of being sober? I'm just asking that question. I know you can't answer. So I'm going to suggest to you, if you're an alcoholic who is in recovery and feeling depressed, two things could be happening. The first one is there is some depression happening, in which case you need to get seen by a professional to get assessed. But on the other hand, I know many alcoholics who aren't working a program and being of service, joining a group, having a home group, things like that, having a sponsor. They will often spiral into a low-grade mood because they're actually trying to stop drinking. Okay, so it's someone who's 5.5 years sober, I've just been told. So thank you for that. Thank you for responding and letting me know. So I would suggest you get checked out. If you're 5.5 years sober and you're feeling that you think you might be depressed, I would suggest you go and see a professional.
And it could be a trauma coming up. I mean, this is the key time, which I see is your trauma starts to come up. If it hasn't before, or maybe it has, but 5 is it seems to be a point in a person's recovery that everything starts to unravel a little bit more, and that other layer of the onion kind of gets exposed. See, a lot of people come into treatment that are around that, and in recovery, that
they do.
Things start to happen.
Yeah.
People are depressed. You have emotional rock bottoms.
Yeah. That's a very good point you make, because there was a gentleman in here recently, had quite a lot of time up, had working good program, sponsored, done the steps, everything that you would ask anybody in recovery in AA to do, or NA. But he came in because he needed to look at his childhood trauma. That's what he came in for. So that might be something to consider. You can always reach out to the intake team and have a chat with them about it. And it's not about necessarily coming in here, but you might get some clarity around that. But please don't do it by yourself. You know, if you're 5.5 years sober and struggling, 5.5 years is great. Congratulations. But if you're struggling, don't do it alone. It's not fun doing it alone. We can't do it by ourselves, you know. What is it Gabor Mate says? You know, the opposite of addiction. What is it? Everyone
It's
goes,
connection.
It's connection. Yeah, we need to have connection with each other. Okay, another question. I hope that answers that for you. I just left a work Christmas party and I must have drunk 8 big glasses of water in a wine glass. Sorry, I'm laughing because I can just see that, you know, glug, glug, glug. And I feel so full and exhausted in holding conversations in general, trying to be joyful. I feel like a bit of a fake, pretending to be interested in conversations. This is hard work, isn't it?
Still hard work.
Yeah. We don't do well with fake conversations, and I know I've done this where somebody's pressed me to go to something. I had no boundary, couldn't say no, turned up, saw all these people I didn't know, thought, oh no, this is just going to be a disaster. Had the drink, was handed the soft drink, went in, tried to make contact with people, tried to chat to them, couldn't really connect, drank the water, popped it down and walked out the back door, you know, did not stay, could not do it, and I was okay with it. And do you know something? No one knew I'd left. Do you know, I've been out with, well, not when I work in the profession I am now, but in the profession I had before this, and I'd go out to functions and they'd all be getting, you know, well and truly drunk. They were not alcoholic, they weren't a problem. And I'd leave about 10 when dinner had finished, or, you know, a bit before. I'd quietly say goodbye to someone and just go. And then the next day in the office on the Monday, they'd say, what about when we went to that club, you know, like it was 2 o'clock in the morning, they thought I was still there. I'd gone at 10, they didn't even know I'd gone. So,
I support you to get on the phone and have a meaningful conversation with someone that can fill your cup back up.
Yes.
Not your actual cup, because it sounds like you've drunk enough water.
That's right.
But because you've been sucked.
Yeah.
You know, your energy, it's hard to be walled, really. It's kind of like a boundaried in that sense, and feel like you can't actually express yourself. So pick up the phone to someone that's safe.
Okay. So we're going to come to the end of our Facebook Live event tonight. A couple of things I wanted to say, and you might want to mention anything that you feel that we haven't covered. So I want to say, don't forget to create the Christmas that you crave. Buy yourself a little something to celebrate your new way of life. You're allowed to do that. Have some fun. Reach out to some like-minded people, and don't do it alone. Tori, anything you want to add?
I think that sums it up for me too. Don't do it alone.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is our last Facebook Live event for this year. We will be back in 2023. Have a safe and sober Christmas and New Year, and we look forward to catching up with you then. Thank you very much.
Thanks.